Well, hey everyone, welcome to Digging Deeper. I'm sure as you're listening, you might be thinking, that's not Tim. You're right, I'm not Tim because I'm subbing in for Tim. So many of you might know this, Joe mentioned it last week, but Tim is on baby watch he's been on baby watch the last 2 weeks. But we're filming this on a Friday morning, or on a Friday afternoon. But this morning we got a text, Tim saying that his baby arrived, his first child. Him and Rachel gave birth to a baby girl, Clara Jane. So we're really excited. Yeah, really
lovely.
Yes, really, really, really excited for him. So I am subbing in for Tim this week, and I'm excited. We're going to be talking about a topic that's really important to me, important for, I guess, especially this cultural moment that we find ourselves in. It's a topic of anxiety. Now, we're going to not be talking about vaccines today. We're not going to be talking about politics. Those are, important topics, but we're going to jump back into Philippians, which is going to be great, and we're going to talk out of Philippians chapter 4, specifically verses 5 through 7. And Paul talks about anxiety. And so without further ado, I'm going to have you guys introduce yourselves. And before they do, I just want to say I can't think of two more qualified, professional, credible women to speak on this topic as these two who are with me today. And so I'm going to let them introduce themselves. So let's start with you. Introduce yourself. Say what you do and what your name is and how long you've been doing that and why you're in the field that you're in.
Great. Thanks, Nat. So I'm this person's sister. Older twin sister.
Okay, but you're more than that. You're more than that.
I'm Nicole, and I'm a marriage and family counselor. Right now, I'm an intern, a registered intern, which means I'm working on my licensure and done with schooling and all of that. So Florence here is actually somebody who has helped me along the way. I'll see her every now and then and ask her, hey, am I doing this thing right with this client? So, what got me into counseling, I think, I feel like my answer changes like every year. Why did I do it? But there's a couple things. One is I just love learning what makes people tick and learning, how do people go from point A to point B, and what motivates them. And the second thing is that I love asking socially inappropriate questions to people and not having to apologize for it.
Wow.
So, yeah.
We can be really nosy.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay, and
I don't know if I answered all your...
Yeah, so, so you're marriage and family counselor in our community. How long have you been doing that for?
So I graduated about 4 years ago. So I've been in Grants Pass doing it for about 4 years.
Awesome. Okay, let's go to you.
I'm Florence Nikas. I'm a licensed therapist in the state of Oregon. I've been doing it, I graduated in 2013. When I was 50, it was suggested to me that I go to school after a series of a lot of losses, big losses, marriage, business, home, property. And when it was suggested to me, it felt like the heavens had opened up. Like that was exactly like everything that I had gone through in life had culminated to that moment. And from that point on, God just like opened the way. And so I've been doing it for about 9 years, 8-9 years now. And I love what I do. I feel really humbled that God has put a calling on my life. And I'm excited to be here and share a little bit of what I know.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, thanks, ladies. I so appreciate you both being here. Now, I know there's, high confidentiality in what you both do, but I just want to make clear, you two counsel both men and women, right? So anxiety is not just a women thing, right?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Nice. Well, what I appreciate about both of you is that you're in the trenches with people. And I think that I'm just appreciative. I know on this podcast, we want to definitely meet people where they're at in their experiences, and so super grateful to have both of you on here today. I can't underemphasize that. So I guess let me open up just with our passage now. obviously we're in the book of Philippians, so real quickly, Philippians 4, I'm just going to read 5 through 7. Paul says, "Let your gentleness be evident to all. The Lord is near. Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God, and the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus." So, okay, real quick, I guess I just want to share a little bit personal testimony why I feel passionate about this topic. I know for me, I definitely, Nicole and I grew up in the church and lots of Bible knowledge, lots of prayer, and intimate relationship with God. But I remember like 3 years ago, I started experiencing a lot of anxiety that was very confusing to me, some episodes. And I was, just incredibly confused. And I was really stuck, and it was just a strange experience for me because I'm like, what? I didn't know. Like, I thought Christians who prayed and read their Bibles didn't get anxious. This is really strange to me. And I remember praying a lot and continuing to read verses, but for some reason I still was very, very stuck. I remember thinking, is there sin in my life? Is it something I'm eating? Like, what's going on? Is it lack of sleep? But finally, I had a really wise person in my life recommend me to get some counseling, and God used an incredible woman in my life to help me get to the root of anxiety that I was feeling, help me unpack a lot of stuff that hadn't been unpacked in my life. And I guess and I don't mean to say this flippantly at all, but I feel like there were some misconceptions around anxiety as I grew up in the church. And I don't think people are ill-intentioned with these. I think they're well-intentioned. But I remember as I was going through it, I just wrote a few down. Misconceptions like anxiety comes from lack of prayer. Anxiety, a true Christian should never be anxious. Or maybe if you take medication, that means you're not relying on God. Or even things like anxiety can always be cured by prayer and by scripture. And in my experience, I was praying a lot. I was reading a lot of verses, but what God used was an incredibly wise, wonderful woman to help unpack things for me. So I guess I just want to, in a season, I know anxiety has existed since the beginning of mankind, but in a season where I think it's safe to say many people are experiencing a lot of anxiety, inside and outside of the church, I guess I just want to ask both of you, do you guys think that there's misconceptions around anxiety, whether in the church or maybe people coming in having misconceptions around anxiety or mental illness or any of that? Am I right in saying that? Or, what do you guys think?
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned those misconceptions because they're actually quite often we hear those from people, and we hear them most. I'll speak from personal experience. I hear them most from clients who are Christians. Wow. And I feel so discouraged when I hear that from Christians because it's not just helping them through anxiety and, times of anxiety, but it's also, okay, well, first let's unwrap and unravel the misconceptions about anxiety, and then we can treat the anxiety. And that can sometimes feel really discouraging, and it keeps people from actually taking that step and, heading into the therapy office.
Yeah, I've even heard somebody say that they thought that mental illness was sin.
Wow.
And so you're right, unpacking that core belief was really challenging because they had heard it so much, I've had organizations tell me that. And mental illness is an illness, it's not sin.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with that. And to be honest, I kind of laughed and chuckled in the beginning when you said it's not just a women thing, it's a men thing too. It's the first misconception I had written down is that, it's not just, despite there's being 3 women talking about this.
Right now.
Definitely, it's both and.
Yeah, and it hits everybody. Children, I have a lot of veterans that are my clients. They have high anxiety in general, and it's everybody.
So would you two say that in this time it has been incredibly heightened based on the last, since 2020? Would you say it's been heightened, you've seen more of it, or it's just kind of revealed something that's been stirring all along? Does that question make sense?
I definitely think it's heightened. In in all arenas. I get people coming in and they have anxiety about world events, and they have anxiety about the state of our country or the state of our state. And I try to bring it down to more of a micro. Let's focus on what's going on in our area, in our town, because we don't have control over all that big stuff. We have very little control, but we do have control over creating social change on a more micro level. And for some people, it could be something as simple as walking around the block and picking up trash, but feeling like you have control over something can help with that anxiety.
Yeah, I think anxiety is rampant, and it's not just with people who have mental illness. Anxiety is rampant right now with people who aren't taking care of themselves, overstressed, burned out, people who are, in difficult relationships, codependent relationships. But I agree, there's that right now, this uncertainty with what's going to happen next. How much do we really know, and how much can we really depend on beyond, our basic needs at this point. So I would agree with Florence on that.
Yeah, okay, so let's peel back the layer just a little bit. And where does anxiety come from? Like how would you define anxiety? How does someone know if they have it? Where would you ladies say anxiety comes from?
Go for it.
In this podcast.
I think it'd be best to define it first, because it's so broad.
Yeah.
I mean, even in the manual that has all the disorder names, there's different types. We've got anxiety, we have panic, we have OCD, separation anxiety, social anxiety, PTSD, generalized anxiety, phobias. So we're talking about something really big here. In a simple definition, I might say it's a bell ringing in our head that's telling us to be afraid of something in the future.
Interesting.
A future fear. Did you want to add anything?
Nope. I was going to say future tripping.
I like that.
Just keep it really basic. It's about, the unknown, about worrying about the what ifs.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then how would you two, facilitate a pathway for someone, and I know that this takes, at times months, hours of therapy, but how would you, at a basic level, facilitate a directional pathway for someone who comes in and, so I'll just think of myself, coming into this counselor's office being like, I'm experiencing this anxiety. I don't know where it's coming from. So how would you ladies facilitate a pathway for someone who finds themselves there?
Well, you're right. It is a complicated situation, but I always start with the basics. How are you sleeping? Are you drinking enough water? How much junk are you eating? Because there's certain things that will increase your anxiety: caffeine, alcohol, processed sugars, things like that. So I start with the basics, and sometimes it's I drink 5 gigantic monsters a day, and so it's kind of a simpler fix, right? But for people that have experienced trauma or that are feeling traumatized by what's happening with the world, I still start there with the basics.
Yeah. Every time I talk with you about stuff I'm worried about, Florence, with counseling, it's like, are you taking care of yourself? I'm like, yes, I think so. But yeah, those basics are huge. I think in order to help people start thinking and actually have a thinking process, to use this part of our brain, we have to calm. So building that rapport with, say you were to come into my office.
Well,
In my bedroom.
that's frequent. That happens often. But okay, we can talk hypotheticals.
Hypothetically speaking, if you were to come into one of our offices, we might first let's just calm the brain down, and then we could start thinking about things, thinking through, when did this start? How long has it been going on? Make it more quantifiable. That way we can start to, like Florence was saying, gain a sense of control over it.
Yeah. So,
And I also tell people they're not crazy. Some people need to hear that.
why do you think that's important for people to hear, that they're not crazy?
Anxiety sometimes makes you feel crazy.
And a lot of times people feel alone in that, like they're the only ones, right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, quantifying it is definitely important.
Where do you think, so you made a comment, Nicole, about how a lot of times it's your Christian clients who, I don't want to butcher your words, but often need a little bit more of the reassuring that, almost like the unwinding of the misconceptions they believed maybe growing up. That's concerning to me to hear that it's Christians that almost have to work, maybe start their start line like 2 miles back before they can even begin their journey, because they got to unwind all this stuff in the past. So where would you start with them? I know that there's some boundaries with therapy and where how you do that and how much you can talk about but yeah, how would you start with that? Because that's concerning to me that's you almost are set back a little bit with that kind of thing.
Well, I mean, if we unpack that passage that you just read, I think it's important first to acknowledge that, we all get it wrong at times. We're not perfect. And so what we learn in the church and in our families, in reading scripture, we're going to misinterpret it sometimes. And I like that passage being more of an encouragement rather than a condemnation, that you don't have to worry. Don't be anxious about anything. It's okay. Like, the Lord, I got it. And I'm going to give you peace through this. It's not a shaking the finger, what's wrong with you? Why are you worrying? So I would first start maybe with trying to understand where they learned this anxiety is bad. So being a marriage and family therapist, I try to come to understand the person in the context of their system they grew up in, whether it's flesh and blood or if you're raised in a foster care home or in an orphanage, whatever it may be, in another family. How did you learn? How were you taught that this is something that's not okay? How do people respond to you when you are anxious? What is it like to be anxious around others in your family? Is there anybody else that you see that struggles with this? And just helping them again start to think through some of these things, how did you develop these ideas? And how did you learn that this isn't okay or that you can't have this? Those types of, it's a lot of asking, questions and getting them to think.
Yeah. Anything you'd add to that, Florence?
Well, since I specialize in trauma, I do pretty much the same thing, but from a trauma-informed perspective, and trying to figure out if a client has been through trauma, and if they have, start processing it with them.
So I'm going to throw something at you. What would you say defines trauma? Like, would you say that's, what would you define as trauma if you had to just like define it?
Well, I think that it can be pretty broad, but basically something that's happened to you, sexual assault, domestic violence, a car accident, going to war, of course, being bullied. A lot of different things can cause trauma. But basically, if some event happens that creates dysfunction for you, then that, I think, is a solidified trauma.
Okay. So, like, obviously, I know earlier, Nicole, you had mentioned that you know, when people come in, there's a, you'll ask, I think both of you alluded that you'll ask, some health questions, how you're sleeping, eating, this and that, how are you taking care of yourself. But could it be true that someone has anxiety about an experience or a trauma that they might be asleep to, and part of your guys' job is to help them find that situation? Because it kind of seems like there's shame in people's anxiety because they don't know where it's coming from. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Would you guys agree with that?
Yeah, that I don't see that very often. Usually people know when they've experienced something. But sometimes there's kind of an unknown factor that we have to tease out a little bit more. And building rapport is really important in doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think if that does happen, it's usually in the context of a family. So something that I've seen before is that, like, you have a family and one or two of the kids has this high anxiety, and parents are like, well, where is it coming from? Like, nothing happened to them that I know of, or have an adult in my office and they're like, I don't know where this anxiety comes from, but they have just a really tough time with performance or around people, And sometimes I think those come from just being in a family where this person has absorbed a lot of unresolved tension of the family, and they just manifest it most by trying to be perfect or by living by these shoulds, oughts, I need to do this, and they have this idea of this is where they should be in their head that's unrealistic. So I think if they are asleep to something, it's that they just were in a family where there was a lot of like tension that nobody could see, but they just absorbed it all.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So there could be a kid in the family that's experiencing a lot of anxiety, and they're absorbing something that's kind of unsaid in the family, or something that's happening in the family, they're absorbing it.
Yeah, it can be. I don't want to like think it or over explain something and go down a different path here, but I do think it's important, especially in the church, to notice that sometimes when maybe a marriage doesn't work through its tension or issues, or if sometimes if a kid is scared of their other kid getting in trouble so much, or if there's like hurt that hasn't been talked about in the family, then usually one of the people in the family, one of the members, will just manifest all that tension and like absorb it all. It can be kind of complicated, but it makes sense when you think about it.
Yeah. Anything you'd add to that, Florence?
Well, I was thinking from more of a trauma perspective, that people tend to, the brain, the amygdala, part of the brain, stores the trauma. And if something triggers that, then the body will feel that trigger. And a lot of times that's where anxiety comes up with people that have experienced some kind of trauma. And it's our thoughts are so powerful. And I think Nicole touched on that earlier about getting people into the reasoning part of their brains, and out of that trauma based amygdala. And the Bible talks about, as a man thinks, as a woman thinks, so shall they be. Mother Teresa said, where your thoughts go, your life follows.
Wow.
And so I think focusing on our thoughts is extremely important. And I'll talk more about that later.
That's yeah. It's encouraging.
Because, our thoughts can create that anxiety. Not any situation that's actually happening. Although there's a lot of situations happening right now, but yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so whether it's a trauma, so what I'm hearing is, these things can come from trauma or, not taking care of yourself, or even something stuck in the amygdala, right? Amygdala, did I say that right? Okay.
Good job, Nat.
Thank you. So,
Your counselor taught you well.
Yes, I know. Yeah, definitely. Or, or I'm hearing it could be a kid being the lightning rod in their family or absorbing stuff from their family, attention that's not being addressed. Let's talk solution-based for a second. I don't know, I guess the only thing I could say is how do you stop that runaway train? Or even just for someone who, they love God, their life is healthy, but they're just panicky in this season. They're not sure how to just relax amidst what they're seeing on the news and this and that. So, yeah, how would you be solution-based with someone who's in that spot?
Well, so I do a lot of cognitive behavioral therapy, which the very basics of it is your thoughts create your emotions, which create your behaviors. And so along the lines of the Bible, talking about how important our thoughts are, I talk to my clients about what their thoughts are. And I teach them how to redirect. And I like my clients to redirect to thoughts of gratitude. And that is actually a neurobiological exercise.
Wow.
Because so most people that have anxiety or trauma, they have a negative loop that just constantly going, right? And that's creating a really strong, strong neural pathway in your brain. And we want to disrupt that. And when you have grateful thoughts, you're disrupting that loop. And you're also growing something called a dendrite, which is like a little tree in your brain. And at the end of the tree, at the end of the branches, it releases positive chemicals. And so we want to grow a lot of dendrites. So I talk to my clients about living a life of gratitude, like all day long, looking for things to be grateful for. There's a lot of research on gratitude, and Harvard came out with a research. They have a whole happiness research facility. They came out with...
Sounds fun.
Yeah. Some studies recently that said if you write down 3 new things that you're grateful for every day, your happiness increases.
Wow.
But I also, great, your happiness increased, but it really helps you redirect from those thoughts that create those anxious thoughts, and that moves you in that direction of anxiety.
Yeah, science over here. Scientist, I mean. No, you explained that really well. So I enjoy helping people rewrite their story. So no longer being a victim to anxiety, which means it's really easy to navel gaze and to look at the anxiety and try to figure it out internally, but that doesn't really do a whole lot for us because it just gets us stuck in this scattered thoughts mind. So helping, in a sense, take the anxiety out and set it aside next to you and start looking at it and starting to gain a sense of control over it as if it's another person. And then interacting with it and saying, okay, I no longer have to be victim to this. I can start, let's find some weapons with this anxiety. Let's, I'd rather start having a sense of control. I'd rather start having a sense of confidence. And instead of looking at this situation through the eyes of my amygdala or my anxiety, looking at the situation through the eyes of, okay, this is what my anxiety would say about this, but this is what the Lord could say about this. Or this is what my family could say about this. This is what I can say about this. So in a sense, helping people write a new narrative.
Interesting. So
they're no longer victim to anxiety.
Okay, so that combines nicely with what both of you have said, because in your words, someone has a narrative on loop in their head that is not helpful to them moving forward through flourishing in their life, and you want to help people rewrite that. And I mean, how how does helping someone not be a victim help them? Like, yeah.
Yeah, that's huge. Victim is like giving up your power and control, and we are not victims. The Lord has given us, I mean, there's a lot of Bible verses about how much value we have and how much worth we have in Christ. Even for people who don't know Christ, God still has given them so much value. And
Yes.
Anxiety wants to, hide us from the world, and anxiety keeps us from flourishing to be the people that the Lord has created us to be. And when we look through the eyes look to the world and look in our situations as if we're victims to it, then we're pretty much just laying down every gift and setting it aside and saying that, like, I can't use this, I'm not worth using this, and you just stay stuck. It's kind of like why you were saying in the beginning, I just felt so stuck with this. I didn't know where to go. And meeting with somebody, they were able to help you walk through that. No longer like trapped by this like feeling of doom, but okay, like I can push the anxiety down. I can see above this, and now I can start to like walk with it.
Wow, that's amazing. So how would you help someone maybe nuance out like the difference between focusing too much on their anxiety versus in a healthy way of like, I need to process this, versus like there's some people that completely ignore what's going on in their lives and are kind of participating in like an escapism. Does that make sense? So like, what's the balance between pressing forward and like, okay, I'm not a victim, I'm gonna move forward in life, but also, oh no, there's stuff that needs to be processed. Like, what would you say to that, Florence?
Well, first of all, I think people have to recognize that there's something going on that needs change. And so obviously Nicole and I have different styles and different areas of expertise. And this is like, an hour of trying to cram in as much information.
So true.
Yeah, and for me, I think my goal today is to try to help people have a few things they can walk away with that they can do to actually change their lives. And so I think I'm not answering your question.
Oh, no, that's okay. That's helpful. Yeah.
But I just want people to, I mean, this is not, armchair therapy here. We are wanting you to focus on God and know how much you are loved, and that the anxiousness is, I think it's pretty normal right now. And that that if you can redirect your thoughts and to things of gratitude, to knowing that you are loved, and connecting with others is the best you can in these times. All of this stuff, is a step in the right direction. Is it going to cure everything? No, probably not. But any little tool you can have that you can use. I was going to suggest an app called Pause, Pause. It's put together by John Eldredge, who's a famous author, and it's a Christian meditation. And there's some of the meditations are on mental strength, and those are really helpful. There's 1 minute, 3 minute, 5 minute, But I just think whatever tools you can find is that you can just use that resonates with you. Use them all the time. Figure out a way to have a feeling of control in your own world, not in all of the things that are going on out there.
Yeah, that's good. Well,
Yeah.
I went off on a tangent. But
no, it's okay. That's great. That was
No.
very helpful.
I do want to add not being afraid of anxiety, normalizing it. This is a thing. It's very common, if not more common than not, to have it. Asking yourself, okay, like, it's here. I don't need to be afraid of this. It's real. It doesn't mean there's something wrong with me. It just means that, there's something happening. And asking, am I avoiding something? Is there something that isn't addressed? Like Florence said in the beginning, am I not taking care of myself physically, emotionally, mentally? 5 basic areas of health are physical, spiritual, emotional, social, and physical. I think I got them all. Was that the
One more
first one?
time.
Mental?
Physical.
Physical, emotional, spiritual, mental, social. Yeah.
Perfect. That's good. Yeah,
and
that's
if
good.
there's anything out of balance there, then it would provoke anxiety.
That's
So, checking in. And then if those are all taken care of, then there could be something more there and worth talking to somebody about.
Well, and ultimately, God is in control, right? And He's in control of all of this garbage going on in our world right now and in our lives. And if we can just bring it back to that and really believe it with our heart and soul and mind, that God's got us and He loves us, and that He's going to handle it in some way. And if we can just give it to the Lord, just envision wrapping it up in a package and say, here you go, God. Take the stuff that is really creating so much pain and suffering and worry and, just, I know we always say give it to God, but I mean, I really envision a package, of my stuff, and I just hand it to Him.
Yeah, that's huge. I think in my own depravity, my own sin, my tendency is to be self-sufficient, take care of it myself. And that hasn't helped me in the last few months. I've burned out by doing that. Always, trying to do it on my own. And I think that is what the verse is really getting at, is really there is no peace apart from the truth of God, the truth of Jesus.
Amen.
So I wholeheartedly agree with you on that from personal experience, really.
Would you ladies say that there's a lot of shame and condemnation and guilt around people who experience anxiety, that almost downward spirals us even more with that? You think there's feelings of that with anxiety?
Yeah, especially with people in the helping profession. Right now we've got teachers, therapists, pastors, assistants at the schools. Even if you're doing customer service right now, oh my goodness, I feel for you. People have very little patience right now with all this angst and everything. And I think people are tired of being yelled at right now, and, so I think there's a lot of this, I'm feeling anxious, especially if you're typically the helper, the one in the helping position.
Yeah.
And when I'll include myself in this, start to realize, oh my gosh, I'm struggling with the same thing, it's easier to try to push that aside and be like, no, my role is to be the helper. But we all can't be that. If we were all the helper, then we'd all be in trouble.
All the time anyways, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, I do think that shame can definitely be a symptom of anxiety and of any mental health issue.
Totally.
Definitely. So, yeah, just as we're wrapping up here, I love what you said, Florence. I'm going to pull up this verse again, but what were the words you used? You said cognitive...
Behavioral therapy.
Right. So this verse really leans into that. So it's almost like you planned that. But you said, so Paul says actually in verse 8, he says, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. And then he goes on and says, and the God of peace will be with you. So there's so much power as we reflect on those things. And I'm just hearing you really allude to that through this practice of gratitude, which is just, beautiful. So,
yeah, and there's so many verses that can point to the fruit of what anxiety or suffering can bring. Like in Second Corinthians, the first chapter talks about how we can receive comfort when we're feeling anxious. We learn to give that comfort to other people when they're anxious. And I want to encourage people who have struggled with anxiety and have learned how to overcome that, how much empathy that you get to have for other people going through that. And that is what the body of Christ is about, is that, process, I think.
Agreed. If you don't mind, I'd like to read something that Rick Warren wrote. Don't worry may be the most difficult command in the Bible to keep. Every one of us has broken that commandment. We break that commandment all the time because it's in our nature to worry. Jesus said it like this: do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble on its own. Matthew 6:34. The reason why you mess up today is because you spend most of your emotional energy regretting the past and worrying about the future. But worry has never changed anything. Worry is worthless. It can't change the past. It can't control the future. Worry can only make you unhappy today. Every moment of your life that you spend worrying is wasted.
Boom punch. That is so
Mic drop.
good.
I love Rick Warren.
Yeah. I know for me, like, what's been transformative in just my journey is the spiritual disciplines, not as things to just check off a list and say I did because I'm trying to, like, please God, but, like, spiritual disciplines are just choosing to sit with God with no agenda, just in silence and solitude. I try to not have any sort of, like, I got to do this, got to say this, got to make sure I come away with this word from the Lord. I think God just wants us to sit with him and just, like, bask in his presence. And we might never hear anything, but just sitting and enjoying Christ. And I'm very into the contemplative spirituality of just being with God and meditating on his word. And then I feel like I can sense if there's things rising up in me that aren't of God, fears and so I almost feel like what's been transformative for me is just setting aside time for rest and silence and solitude. And almost like that's been an amazing cure to any sort of irritability in me, because then I'm starting to realize stuff in my heart that I've been shoving down throughout the week. You know what I mean? And so...
Yeah, I think that's super important. If you have a busy week or you're in a high-stress job... or you just like to be on the go all the time. You're a mom, doesn't have a ton of time to do that contemplative spirituality because you have a lot of kids. It's easy to push down any sort of emotions or push down any sort of stress. And it's hard in those moments to sit and just, have a contemplative, reflective stance because of how much stimulation you have. And I think it is really important to note that the more that just catches up, the harder it is to be that reflective and contemplative. But I do want to, throw it out there for moms. I've never been a mom, so maybe you could speak to this, Florence. But like for a mom who really doesn't have a ton of time, or a dad, if he's a single dad, to like just be able to meditate and sit and let things catch up. How they can even do that.
Well, I think it's important to figure out how to self-care, right? My favorite words.
Yes.
And to take time for that. Something that both Nicole and I do is mindfulness training. And in a nutshell, it is being present with no judgment. And I think we really have a hard time doing that.
Oh, yeah.
And so as far as being a parent goes, it's hard to carve out that time.
Oh, I bet.
And I think sometimes it's impossible, really. But you still can take time to drink some water. You still can take time to eat some healthy food, some healthy snacks, even if you take time to do 10 minutes of yoga. All of those little things will help in being restorative, and of course spending time in the Word is the most important thing. Mm-hmm. Even if it's one Bible verse, meditate on that.
That's awesome.
So sounds like you need to do the pause. You need to do the pause app.
Sure, that sounds great. I love that. So okay, I want to get into a time of just talking to Tim calls it the digging. Wait, what does he call it? He calls it digging deeper into resources or something like that. He's gonna be so sad that I forgot this phrase.
You may just have butchered it.
I know. Digging deeper is what the podcast is called. I think he calls it.
Listen to Digging Deeper.
I listen to it all the time. I think he's saying going deeper. That's why I think it's called going deeper with resources. So I want to talk about that, but before we do that, I want to encourage just people who are listening to this or watching. What I've heard from these ladies is that anxiety is normal. It happens to all of us. It's not just something that Gen Z struggles with. It's very normal, okay? And so, man, I want to encourage anyone, if you found yourself where I was a few years ago, where you found yourself panicky and maybe full of shame and, a Christian shouldn't be struggling with this. I just want to encourage you just to relax and press into the Lord and fall. If you need to, see a counselor, feel free. No shame in that. That's fine. That's investing in your emotional and mental health. And so I just want to encourage anyone who finds themselves, in that spot. So, okay, let's go deeper. So any resources that you ladies would recommend? I heard this app. You said it's called Pause. Yeah, Pause.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Like how you spell pause.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't know.
Congratulations, you passed first grade.
Okay.
And I also like the Battlefield of the Mind by a book written by Joyce Meyer.
Yeah.
Actually, anything by Joyce Meyer.
Sweet.
But that one really talks about those thoughts, those bad thoughts.
Bad thoughts.
Joyce Meyer's great when it comes to how we think.
Yeah.
I would say a plug-in for if there's anxiety in relationships. I see that quite a bit. Couples, families. We have classes on like untangling relationships, so codependency. It's really easy for us to be anxious, how we're doing in our relationships, and anxious being single by ourselves. So I like that class a lot. And I think there's some other classes at our church. We'd have to look at our brochure, but I know there are some on on that topic. So
yeah, those. I don't know what the classes you guys are going to have this September.
Mm-hmm.
It's September already.
Yeah.
But all of those classes are incredible. They are, and plug in. It's important not to isolate. This is a good way of connecting and learning and healing and being part of the body of Christ.
Life groups are huge with that. I'll plug
absolutely.
in for life groups.
And what so you're right. We're in our specialty life group sign up season also, and Untangling Relationships is on there. I think Susie Ashbridge teaches that, and
she's fabulous.
I took it twice. I'm just gonna be honest, and it was very good. Yeah, you took it with Okay, this is your time to say you took it too.
I did.
I took it too.
Really? Okay, so
I would take it again.
Yeah, it's good. So, and I know there's lots of great co-ed groups too, and groups for men that are helpful also. So,
random. I know Psychology Today has some great little tiny articles on anxiety or other things. They're not too long. They make it super simple. If you just want to be like, what's going on? Is this anxiety? Whatever. Little understandable articles on there too.
Great. And I would just want to plug two books that has just been good for me. They're both by the same author, Ruth Haley Barton. And Silence and Solitude is one, and then Invitation to Retreat.
So I'm reading that right now.
Yes, you are. And what do you think?
Super good. Highly recommend it.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah, so those are great books. Again, Ruth Haley Barton. And good books on just being present with what's in your soul and just letting God tend to your soul when it's burnt out or when it's just, just in the fringes of life. So,
And we do have counselors at the church.
yes.
Very affordable.
Yeah.
If I'm understanding that
Yeah.
right.
Mm-hmm.
I know that there's a lot of wait lists for counselors right now because the need is so high, and the people who do counseling here at the church are, I think they're very competent, and I've talked with them, and I think they're super relatable, and so I'd put a plug in for church counseling, lay counselors.
Awesome. Anything lastly that either of you want to add?
Oh, thanks for asking us about this. And,
Mhm.
this is, whenever I hear anxiety come up as like the sermon topic, I'm always thinking like, oh, like I hope they talk about this well, or they talk about this in a way that's not hurtful to people. And it's just a passion I know of mine and Florence, and I think you, just to be able to let people know like you belong. You're not crazy. This is it's the way things are, and it's okay.
Yeah, good job.
Any last words you want to add, Florence?
No, I think I've said it all.
Well, hey, thank you so much again. I just honor both of you as co-laborers in the church. Honor you both as women speaking into this, influential voices in our church, and and in the community, not just in the church. So really appreciate both of you. And digging deeper. Tim is back next week, and I know that I've missed him being on Digging Deeper. So hope that you join us next week as he comes back. And thanks again, ladies.